Hello, hello, hello. How's it going? Happy Wednesday. Let me get my questions up. All right. Hi, everybody. We are also live on YouTube right now. Hello. All right. Let's get into it. Yay! I'm glad that you're here. What's up, Lil? Lily's here. We're at the office. We're at the store today, not at my house. So a little bit different of a background.
We're going to paint a wall.
Yeah.
Whoever can guess which wall gets a high five next time they come in.
Yeah. I bet you can guess the color. All right. Let's see.
Sorry about my presentation there.
I put it in your bag.
Thank you.
All right. Let's just get into it. So today we're going to talk about heat stress. Also, if you have any questions while we're going live, you can put them in the question submissions, and then I can click on my questions button and answer them. And then everyone will be able to see the question. So it's hot out. So we're going to talk about heat stress for our general topic today. Also, we're back to basics. We have Topo Chico, courtesy of Ralph. Ralph is the best. Go to the liquor store next door if you are in Shaw. So it's hot outside. A lot of our plants are indoors. However, the heat is going to still affect them. Obviously, the sun is much more intense. If there's like no clouds in the sky, it's not raining, etc., it's going to affect the humidity in your home as well as the temperature, unless you live in an airlock chamber, which wouldn't be good for you, or the plants. Anything that's going on outside is still going to impact what's going on inside. So then especially from there, if you do have any of your house plants outside, or maybe you have herbs or vegetables, when it's really, really hot outside, you really need to be very aware of the status of your plants. You know, very similarly to us, when it's very hot outside, we're sweating more. We need to drink more water. We need to drink things with electrolytes to be replenishing our bodily fluids. We need to be staying cool. So there's as much care as we take with ourselves, like we should extend that to our houseplants as well, especially if we're putting them outside and they're acclimated for the summer. So first things first, if your plant is not already acclimated, putting it outside in the middle of July, in the middle of a heat wave, maybe not a good idea. So we've discussed in the past, like how to acclimate your plants from inside to outside. We also have a YouTube video on how to do that. We made that in the springtime when that was a big topic. Everyone was really clamoring to get outside and bring that greenery outside with them. So if your plant isn't already acclimated, that's your first step in learning how to do it. However, I wouldn't recommend trying to do that right now because it's just too extreme, especially if you have air conditioning in your home. The plant is in a very controlled environment. So then bringing it outside, just like when you walk out of the house in the morning from an air conditioned apartment and you're like hit with a wall of heat, the same thing is happening to a plant, except for they don't have a vascular system like ours. They're not warm blooded. They can't self-regulate the temperature. They're really reliant on their environment to remain consistent. Plants can acclimate to temperature change, humidity change, etc. But usually in their natural environments, that's happening over a very long span of time. So for example, if you have a bird of paradise that normally, could be in Florida or any other tropical environment where it is always this extreme temperature, extreme winds, etc. Because it's acclimated to that environment, it's going to be fine. But if you take it from inside your home and put it outside tomorrow, it's going to curl, get really sad, dry up, have brown leaves, have yellowing even, really just not make it because it's just too extreme of a change too quickly. So heat stress, how to know if that's happening with your plants. Heat stress is something that happens very quickly in tropical plants because it is a reaction to an extreme change. So it's something where you are going to see the plant really wilt and maybe even shrivel because it's really trying to utilize as much water as it can. Plants do have, they breathe through their leaves. I believe it's called a stoma is the technical term. I'm not a biologist, never claimed to be. But that's where they breathe through their leaves from. So they're also going to be losing moisture through those stoma. So if it's really, really hot outside, the plant just like can't keep up. Like it can't bring up enough moisture to replenish how much it's being lost through the leaves because the environment above the soil is just killer. Again, as a plant acclimates to an environment, it can regulate, but that has to happen over a longer period of time. So you're going to see wilting, shriveling. You could see burning or bleaching. So this is going to be, if you watched our most recent plant therapy video, where Shelby brought in her Rhaphidophora that she had in a very bright, sunny, direct spot. It was actually turning really pale green or yellow. So that can happen. You might be able to see like the veins and the cells in your plant really, really well because it's just like the chlorophyll inside is being like burned up. It can almost become like translucent almost. And then obviously the most extreme thing, which I feel like you can see really, it's very apparent in fiddle leaf figs when it's burning. They get really big, aggressive brown spots. We're all familiar with those, and that's if they get too much direct sun. So that's heat stress in houseplants. Those are going to be kind of like the major signs of that. Can also happen with cacti and succulents for the same reasons. If it's just not acclimated to that, to that environment, it can still get stressed out, even if that plant's native environment is a desert, which is very extreme. If it was grown in a greenhouse, it's used to a very consistent in-home conditions. Putting it in that extreme environment, even though it is like capable of living there technically, it's going to get stressed out. So a lot of people will see like a lot of cacti and succulents actually turn like a red or an orange color. It's literally like a suntan. So it's your plant stressing out and reacting and trying to defend itself against the sun. On some plants, especially succulents and cacti that are used to an extreme harsh arid environment, the stress is not like super detrimental, and it can actually elicit like a coloration that is desirable. So this is like in certain euphorbias, the tips will be like on a pencil cactus, the tips are like yellow and then it fades to orange and then green, or vice versa, orange to yellow to green. On other types of euphorbia is just coming to mind right now. Like a trigona there's also a Trigona rubra, which the more sun it's exposed to, the more red it will turn. So there is like, in succulents and cacti, there is like a certain degree, like margin of error, basically, that it can be like stressed, where it's not going to actually be detrimental to the plant. It's more just going to create a different look. But with tropical plants, that margin of error is much smaller. Okay, I just got a question, so I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So Seaside Greenhouse says, I just found out that an aloe is a low light plant, and I currently have one in a south-facing window and it's flourishing. Wonder if it's going into shock if I move it into a room that has less light, just to add a little green in the room, or should I get another plant? So aloe is not a low light plant. I actually don't know why sometimes aloes are sold as low light plants, because they're not. They're definitely a full sun plant, and 99% of the time people have issues with aloes because they're not giving them enough light. So if yours is flourishing, leave it where it is. If you want to get a plant for a low light area, I would not put the aloe in there. I'll get a different plant. I really don't know why people say that aloes, like somebody obviously told you or you read somewhere that an aloe is a low light plant, and it's not. There are, however, the caveat to that is that there are two species of plants that look very, very similar to aloes that are bright indirect light succulents, and those are Haworthias and Gasterias. They look very similar. They're commonly just sold as succulents. We usually get them in our assorted succulent boxes. And those plants, it's not that they're low light, they just don't need 4 to 6 hours minimum of direct sun like an aloe would. They can do maybe like bright indirect light all day long and then like a couple hours of direct sun, and they'll like really thrive. If they're actually in too much direct sun, they'll like shrivel up, they'll get heat stressed. They'll shrivel up, they'll turn like really funky colors and eventually kind of just like dry up from within and die. But yeah, I'm glad you asked too, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Obviously it's hard too because plants are alive. Everybody's home is a microclimate. So, you know, somebody might suggest something to you like in good faith because of their understanding of the lighting, of the direction that you are. And, you know, I've known people who have had southwest facing floor to ceiling windows, and highlight plants just don't thrive in their home. And it's like, come to find out, the way the building was situated, the sun is actually obstructed for most of the day. So they really only get indirect light. It's just things you don't really know until you live in the home, which is also why I recommend people don't buy plants before they move. Get in your house, live there for a minute, stay home a whole day, be there during the day, watch where the sun goes, and then buy your plants. Because otherwise it can get funky and complicated. But we'll talk about moving with your plants next time, because I am moving with my plants. So we answered that question. But yeah, so the last thing I wanted to talk about with heat stress is just with your herbs. So we are still selling herbs for City Blossoms to raise money for their initiatives. 100% of the proceeds from our herb gardens are going straight to City Blossoms. So they are herbs that are sourced locally from a Black woman-owned farm. It's called Deep Roots Farm. They're in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I'm pretty sure. I think I might have mixed around. I don't think I did. I think I got it right. I feel like I've said it so many times. I'm getting like jumbled with my words. And then the City Blossoms team took these beautiful herbs that are locally sourced, and they planted them into little gardens, little assortments. So we have rosemary, lavender, garlic and onion chives, and then many beautiful different types of basil. So we have Tulsi, lemon basil, regular basil. I think that's everything. And we're selling them $28.99. 100% of the proceeds go to City Blossom. So if you want herbs, come on down. They're limited. But herbs are something that are very different from houseplants. So houseplants, you know, we say water once a week, every other week. You know, they're inside where the environment's very consistent. Even if they're outside, typically they're going to acclimate if it's done properly, where they're still going to be on that cycle, unless it's like this week where it's super, super hot, and then you might be watering it a few times a week. Herbs need as much sun as you can give them, and they suck up water like crazy. we all probably have had an experience where we've gotten a basil plant like from the grocery store, and that thing is like the most drama that we've ever had to deal with in our lives. It just is like dead every other day and having lots of issues. They really need a lot of water. It's a very water intensive plant. So if basil is getting heat stressed, you are going to know within an hour, especially if it's outside and if it's in a pretty small pot. Our basil here, we probably have to water twice a day in the gardens, and they're very well acclimated. It's just been so hot, and clay is a breathable material, but they're very tender plants, which most vegetable and fruit annuals are going to be. So if you have herbs and they're outside in full sun, check in on them multiple times a day. The best time to water is typically like in the mornings or in the evenings when there's still like a few hours of daylight, or at least like an hour or two. This is going to allow the plant to recover from the heat, and it's going to give them moisture for the hottest part of the day. If you water a plant during the hottest part of the day, most of that water is just going to evaporate out. So it's not actually going to help the plant. Also, if you water in the middle of the day and you get any water on the foliage, it could burn the plant. All the little water droplets are like little magnifying glasses, like you're burning them. Like the kid sitting on the anthill with his magnifying glass being mean. So try watering in the morning, and then if you have to water again at night, just try not to do it. Here in DC, we don't really have to worry about it, but in other climates, typically you don't want to water at night because at night it gets cooler, and then the condensation in the moisture can cause like mold and fungus. It's just not going to be properly utilized by the herbs or the vegetables. But in DC, it doesn't really cool off at night, so go for it. It should be fine. I got another question. Ooh, we got another aloe question. It's aloe hour. My aloe, okay, so G Smitty says, my aloe is thriving with a few pups and needs to be repotted. It's so crowded, but it's flowering and I don't want to ruin it. What to do? Just wait until the flower is going to last for several weeks. If it's thriving and it's putting out pups, so the aloes are monocots. Let's start there. Aloes are monocots. What does that mean? It's a plant with a life cycle. It lives, it does its thing, it dies. We are monocots. We're born, we reproduce, maybe, we die. That's it. That's the end of our life. Aloes are the same way. So when they put out a flower, and I'm sure you've read this on the internet, like the death bloom or whatever, it's not like anything bad. It's just like the plant's life cycle. It's totally normal and natural. It's going to bloom once it puts out pups, or that's going to signal that it's putting out pups. And then that mother plant is just going to kind of either exist, which I find that for the most part, they will just maintain. They're not going to just like immediately die. Especially in our environment, our home environments are so consistent that they just kind of like go on forever. But most of the energy from the plant is now going to go into all the little offshoots. So just leave it. It's fine. It's totally fine. Let it flower and do its thing. That way you don't have to worry about like breaking it or whatever. I'm sure it's like crazy long and all over the place. And then once it's done and dried up, you can just cut the flower, and you can either take the entire mass and just pot it into a bigger pot so it can stay really nice and full and continue to kind of create this like clump, which is what it would do in the wild. Or, carbonation. Or you can bring it in and we can help you repot it, and we can divide up all of the pups into separate plants. You can give them away, you can keep them, you can have 10 plants, you can do whatever you want. Just being aware that like that mother plant might have like a life expectancy. So it's up to you. You can keep the pups on her and keep it going, clumping, or you can separate them all out. But just wait till the flower's done. You don't have to worry about it. I think you could get it repotted, or we could help you repot it and be like very gentle with the flower, and it'll be fine. If it's already flowering, it's not going to like ruin it, but just wait. It's not a rush. You got plenty of time. I had another question. This one wasn't in the question box. It was just in the chat here, so I'll just read it out to you guys. Velkin asks, I get lots of indirect sunlight from my balcony and AC is usually on, but my spider plant is turning a sudden pale green and my yucca plant is starting to have wavy leaves. Could it be the temp? Maybe. I would suspect that it would be water. Spider plants typically will turn like a pale green, almost like translucent when they are overwatered. So if you've ever repotted a spider plant, you'll actually notice that they have like tuberous roots. They store water. This is why they're like a notoriously popular houseplant, because they're like unkillable. But the trick is to like do less with them. They can kind of hang out for a while and not need like a ton of hand holding, basically. So if your spider plant is turning bright green, make sure it's in a pot with really good drainage, and try to ease up on watering. If you feel like you're not overwatering it, it might not be in like a bright enough spot. So it's not necessarily that you are like overwatering it. It's that it's just getting too much water and then it is not getting enough sun, which converts it into energy. And then once the plant is like utilizing that energy from the sun, it's going to suck up more water. Same concept as like if we go out for a run. If we're just like slowly walking, we're probably not going to get very thirsty, because we're not burning a lot of energy. However, if we're like really running a marathon, we're going to need a lot more water because we're burning a lot more energy. Same concept. The reason I say the watering too is because your yucca, if it has wavy leaves, it's probably, if it looks like pruny, like your fingers, if you've been in the tub for too long, that could be not enough water, because then the plant is getting like desiccated. It's like sucking water from its leaves because it's trying to survive off of its like reserves, because it's not getting it from the soil. If it's wavy, like crimped and like misshapen, it could be underwatering or low humidity. And basically what happens, sometimes you can see this in like birds of paradise, really anything. If it's like, actually, Tasha, my coworker here, DC Plant Mom, she's been doing this thing where she's tagging people in like their ugly leaves that are like coming out all weird. And most of the time, if something comes out deformed, if it wasn't like a weird light issue or a pest, it's typically water. So if it's wavy, it could have gotten like stuck when it was trying to unfurl, and it made it misshapen. And that usually happens because there's just like a stalling in watering, or the humidity drastically changed. So it could be AC, because that happens with birds a lot of the time. They'll get like really curly and unhappy in AC. Just make sure that none of your plants are in an AC draft. But I would check your light and check your watering first. Those are always the two biggest things. And then if you can ever see your plants move in the AC, it's too much. They're not going to like it. But I hope that helped. All right, cool. I love talking to you guys in the chat, in the live, but I haven't even gotten to any of my other questions that people asked me. Sorry. You're welcome. So I did have a question that somebody, and I think this relates like a lot to heat stress. So I did want to answer it. So somebody asked a question about they repotted a rubber plant, and then they went out of town for the weekend. They came back and the plant was like all limp and sad. And they're like, what do I do? How do I save it? So a couple things. When you repot a plant, it's going to go through a period of acclimation. We talk about this a lot. We also have blogs on that. Check it out. And so it's going to need a little bit more care and attention. It's also like a traumatic experience. So Did you turn your AC off like when you went away? Was it really hot? Did you water the plant after you repotted it? There's like a lot of variables. So like what I would guess is either one, you repotted it and shocked it in some way. Maybe you like really damaged a lot of roots on accident when repotting, and that just like really shocked the plant. If you didn't water it immediately after, that's a very traumatic thing that happened. It needs a lot of water. Rubbers really need to be in a pot with a hole. Any ficus, it's just a no-brainer. Put it in a pot with a hole. It's going to be way too much trouble if you don't. And then if you don't feel like you damaged the roots, if you feel like that was all fine, if you watered it and it was all good, did you turn your AC off when you went away for the weekend? And did it turn into like 1,000 degrees in your apartment because you were trying to like save some energy, which is not the wrong thing to do. But for your plants, that could be really stressful, especially if you just got repotted and you're already stressed out, especially if you're a ficus. Ficus have hard times getting repotted. They don't like it. So if you came back, that's really sad. I know you like just came back from your vacation. This has happened to me many times. I come back and my plants are like, either they're like thriving without me, and I'm like, so rude. There's always like one flowering when I'm gone, and I'm like, really? Or they're like devastated. They're like, why did you leave me alone? So just try to give it a little extra TLC. Definitely just give it some water, give it a little bit more light. Whenever a plant is on the mend, we want to give it just a little bit more light than we would think, because it's going to help them get better faster. So we had another question. I'm going to put it up here. Recommendations for an easy, bigger houseplant. Are fiddle leaf figs really as bougie as they say? Yes. I have found that there are fiddle people. Plants, in my opinion, really are like, you have to find ones that like fit your personality and fit your lifestyle and fit your experience level and your commitment level. Because you may love the look of a plant, but if it doesn't hit any of those matches, you're just going to have a bad experience. And for me, that's like not really like worth it. Like you should like your plants and like how they look. And, you know, it should be like a symbiotic relationship. It's a living thing that you're inviting in your home that you're sharing your time and energy with. It's a relationship. So have a good one. I personally am not a fiddle person. I can do other ficus, but for fiddles, for me, like there's just too many problems. There's too many like specific requirements. I can't leave them alone. They can't really like figure it out on their own. For me, in my personality and my like personal entree to plants, like I like to let things be. Like you're over there, I'm over here, we're good. I don't have anything really high maintenance at my house because I take care of plants all day long. I don't want to go home and deal with plants that are high maintenance. But if you only have one plant or you want to be with your plants every single day, then maybe you go for plants that want that kind of attention, that are going to thrive with that. I find that the fiddles that I get really funky and weird and are not in any way a fiddle that people would want to buy at a store. But I kind of like them, but that's what they turned into because I've adjusted my expectations on like what they're going to look like. And then I get to kind of experience something that's a little more unique. And I get to also not worry about the ficus as much. As far as plants that I would recommend that are larger, Dracaenas are super easy, very common. There's a million different types. So if you don't like the look of like a marginata, you can get something completely different. They can be really tall, staggered, etc. So Dracaenas are really great. Scheffleras are also really great, super easy, adaptable. There's a million different kinds. Those would be the ones that I would say to check out. I got one other question. Let's see. So I have a Swiss cheese plant that was gifted to me in April, and it came in its nursery pot. Now I see roots at the top. Do I have to repot? I don't necessarily want the plant to be bigger. So you do have to, you should think about repotting, not necessarily in the sense of like, oh my God, wait, hold on. Okay, this is helpful. Yeah, me and my green crew just look at each other and talk once a week. We're like sisters. Love that. I love that. It's amazing. Yeah, pretty much the same. I'm like apologizing to my plants every 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm sorry. This is the most I can do. Like, I love you. And they're 90% of them are like, we're chill. Anyway, so for your Swiss cheese plant, here's what we should think about repotting. It's not necessarily that you are allowing the plant to get bigger, because allowing the plant to get bigger is less a conversation about repotting and more a conversation about pruning, which we have a YouTube video on. So check it out. Repotting is more about the health of the root system, and it is, as the plant gets larger and the root system gets more developed, we want to make sure that we're keeping that root to soil ratio balanced. Because if a plant stays in a pot for too long, there will physically be more roots in there than soil. And if there's no soil, there is no medium to hold on to moisture for the plant, and it's going to eventually cause its decline. So we want to repot plants to refresh the soil and help us with watering. And yes, of course, the plant will like get bigger and grow longer, stronger, taller, bushier, healthier. However, if your concern with a Swiss cheese plant is it getting too big, you are in luck, because Swiss cheese plants are vines. So at any time, if it's too long or you don't like how wild and crazy it's getting, it's super easy to prune and then propagate. And if you don't want those propagations, there's a lot of people that do. Or you can just like root them. I repurpose my plants all the time as gifts. You know, or you could just throw them away. Honestly, it's your prerogative. Compost them. So I hope that helps. I had another question in the chat. It was, the tips of my Natal mahogany are brown, but I have new baby leaves. Is there anything I can do for the brown leaves? So brown leaves are never going to revert. Here, I'll put it in here so you guys can see it. Brown, once the leaves are brown, it's never going to turn back to green. So if you don't like how it looks, just get those out of there. Sometimes that can be, it was too hot, it was too cold, it was too dry. A lot of times that'll happen during the winter time, when our homes get super, super dry and they're being artificially heated. It's really, the plants don't really like that, obviously. And then, however, so if you went through that period of time, you got some brown leaves, but all of the new growth looks good, just get rid of the brown leaves, because you know that like you're doing everything okay. And maybe it was just an environmental thing. You know, as long as the new leaves look good, keep doing what you're doing. However, if the new leaves also are brown, you have a systemic issue. Maybe you're not watering deeply enough. Maybe it's too dry in your apartment. Maybe the plant's getting too much sun. So that's whenever you see something wrong with the new growth, that should be what prompts you to investigate and start looking at one different factor at a time. This is why I say, like, don't like move the plant all over the place and like do all this crazy stuff, because it's not going to allow you to single in on like what specific factor is making the plant turn brown or yellow or whatever. Try kind of like investigating one thing at a time to figure out kind of like where things are going wrong. But browning on older leaves is just going to happen. Or it could have been something environmental that happened weeks ago that's not even relevant anymore. So just focus on the new leaves. It's all good. Guys, it's like 6:30 and you're like popping off on the questions. Oh my God, I love this question. Hold on. I feel like my plants are trying to mate, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. I don't know the word for it. They keep growing towards each other and one is flowering. I don't know what types of plants you have. However, if you have anything, plants are always going to grow towards the sun. So if they're all facing the same way, they're all going to grow towards each other. If they're flowering, 'tis the season. But if they're not two of the same plant, they can't mate. And I would assume it's probably a trailing plant. And trailing plants are actually, if you watch them like on a fast, like a Hoya, for example, if you watch them like super sped up, like you had like a high speed camera on them, they actually rotate counterclockwise with their, or clockwise, whichever way they go, with their little tendrils. And that's so they can search and find something to grab onto. So if you have like two trailing plants, they could be reaching out and grabbing each other, which is great. But I don't think they're trying to mate, but that's a fun story. I like that personification. That's really fun. Oh, do you have any more frangipani plants? Took some bad advice from a blog and now it's going from dying to dead. No! Oh, I'm sorry. We don't right now, but Joe loves those plants. So if we can get more, I'm sure he will. Just sign up for our restock notifications on our website. I'm sorry that happened. I'm pretty sure frangipanis are like kind of like, I think they have codexes. So honestly, if you took bad advice, let that plant dry out, leave it alone, and then try to like slowly come back to it, you might get growth again because they're kind of crazy in that way. Also look up caudiciforms. They're really cool plants. All right, I'm gonna try to answer these really, really quickly because these are great questions. Someone asked advice on Ficus Audrey. It seems okay, but is putting out absolutely no growth. It's bought over 2 months ago. It's a ficus. It has a very long acclimation period. Don't be surprised if it's just going to pout for several weeks once you bring it home. No air conditioning, more light than you think. Don't overwater it. Try it out. What's a good beginner plant lover? What's a good book for beginner plant lovers who want to work in a nursery or plant shop? Check out your local Master Gardener program. Even if you don't want to take the program, because it's kind of intense, there's a ton of information, and you'll also just meet people who want to talk to you about plants all day long that are probably smarter than you, which is always fun. Get on the internet. Botany of Desire, yes. Good recommendation, Lily. I honestly did not read a ton of books about houseplants. I just started talking to people about plants and following people on YouTube, and just talking with other like-minded people who I looked to as experts. And then eventually, you might, the really fun part of like learning more and more about plants is like when you talk to somebody and you're like, I don't think that's right. That's not an experience that I've had. Because a lot of this there is plant science, which I would definitely encourage getting a strong base of plant science. Just basic biology, really. You don't have to like read a biology textbook, but just like understanding how their little systems work. But then so much of houseplants is just personal experience. So I have a very informed personal experience because I have owned a lot of houseplants over many years now. And that's irreplaceable experience. But knowing the plant science, like having a good foundation for the plant science is what kind of like helps things click. I've also really found that always looking up the Latin name of the plant and reading up on where the plant is from. And then you can kind of connect plants that live in the same ecosystem, that are within the same family, but maybe share like no obvious similarities. Creating those links also can help you kind of get to different levels with houseplants. All right, I have one more question. Let's see, I have, I'm growing an oak tree from the acorn given as a gift, and I can't find any care instructions. Please help. I started out with fungus gnats, which I think I fixed. So an oak tree is an outside plant. And as a sapling, it can stay inside, but it will just grow kind of funky until it goes outside. Because for a lot of like outdoor only plants, you just can't replicate the inside. I find this a lot when people try to grow vegetables inside, or they try to grow bring like a hibiscus inside, or fruiting trees. Fruiting trees. Ah. you can do it. You can do it. There are varieties that have been cultivated that are for indoor, but it is very difficult and a lot of things can go wrong. It is not a great place to start if you're a beginner. If you have an oak tree and it's just a little tiny acorn that has sprouted its first little leaves, you can definitely have it on your windowsill. It needs as much sun as possible. It needs heat on the pot so that it can grow really robust roots. Don't overwater it. It's got to be in a pot with a hole. It's got to be in a pot with breathable material. You can't really mess around with that. And then if you can put it outside, in a fully shaded but really bright, sunny area that is protected in a lot of ways, that's going to be the best thing you can do for it, especially through the summer. And then eventually it's just going to get to a point where it needs to be outside. Biggest thing is rain is a lot more oxygenated than tap. So if you can give it rainwater, that's really going to help it, especially with root development. And the biggest thing with outdoor plants, airflow. They need really good airflow, and that's something, that we can almost never replicate indoors. So get it really nice and good and strong before it goes outside, and then try to put it outside, and then you'll get a ton of growth. And then if you need to overwinter it, you can, but if it's an oak tree, it should be able to overwinter once it gets strong enough, and it would need to be in a frost resistant pot somewhere that is protected, since in the wild they are going to shoot roots really deep down into the soil, into the part of the ground that never freezes. So that's basement level, a little bit below basement level is where tree roots hang out, which is why they're able to survive the winter time. Okay, cool. All right, we went over time. We did 45 minutes today, but that's okay because it's the 10th after hours that we've done. So we made it to 10 episodes. We're also live on YouTube now, so we're really stepping it up. We have a cover photo, which is great. Very official. I want to thank you guys for joining me with or without your beverages. I always talk too much, so I never actually drink my beverage. It's just for show. And asking really such awesome questions and joining us every week. So keep an eye out next week for our question box and ask away, ask to your heart's desire. Thanks so much. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. Bye. 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 See ya.